Part 75. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 741. Chapter 741. Everyone is afraid of death. It's really wicked. Who on earth got such a harmful thing? That's right, beheading, must beheading. Not to mention that the onlookers ate the melon happily and angrily, but that the good news arrived at Liu's house in a carriage. Mrs. Liu personally welcomed her to Erminiar and received the good news. She then held her hand and walked in while talking affectionately. "Auntie, Uncle Liu is busy at the yamen," Jiyan asked. "No," Mrs. Liu responded, "Keishikao is so busy today, how could you miss it?" Uncle Liu specially took Ximen and Qiaja to see how the hibiscus ointment was destroyed. "These two boys are getting bolder and bolder, and you, Uncle Liu, also want to take the opportunity to hit them." Jiyan nodded and responded with a smile, "Brother Ximen is becoming more and more stable, but Brother Qiaja is as naughty as my fourth and fifth brothers." Mrs. Liu also smiled, "Thanks to your elder brother for taking good care of them in the college. Originally, I wanted to trouble your brother to teach them more, but it turns out that your eldest brother has to go to day school, so I'm still worried." Jiyan waved her hand and gave Mrs. Liu a comfort pill. "Don't worry, Aunt, brothers Hyman and brother Qiaja are both smart. I heard that my husband often praises them. My eldest brother won't go to the academy often in the future, but my sixth brother and seventh brother are still with them, so they will definitely not be bullied, and the family won't have to worry about it. As for the future, without my eldest brother supporting them, they may be able to learn to be steady and learn to do things independently." Mrs. Liu felt very comfortable after hearing the news. She also saw that Jiyan was young, with a chubby face and a round body. She shook her head and made the golden-winged butterflies on her pigtails seem to be alive. She was really cute. But the little girl spoke as logically as an adult, and she liked her even more. So, she called the lady who was serving her and brought over a set of jewelry she had bought at the Silver Building. "I went for a walk at the Silver Building the day before yesterday and saw this set of ivory jewelry, which is particularly suitable for the princess at her age, so I bought it." Mrs. Liu opened the box and urged the good news, "Princess, take a look, do you like it?" Jiyan glanced over and couldn't help but smile and narrowed his eyes. Ivory has a delicate and smooth texture, and now it has been carved into a complete set of jewelry, which is naturally outstanding. Hairpins, bracelets, rings, and brands are all available, and each one is exquisite. The most surprising thing is that most of the jewelry are carved with nine-tailed foxes, which are cute and spiritual." Jiyan happily picked up a sign and played with it, and couldn't help but sigh. "This is also in Tianwu. If it were in modern times, this box would be enough to send her and Mrs. Liu to eat peanuts together." "Thank you, Auntie, I like it very much, so I'll take it without any hesitation. When I get back, I'll show it to Sanjo and ask her to work hard and grow 9 tails as soon as possible." The good news joke made Mrs. Liu and her personal maid laugh. They all knew that Jiyan had a white fox with 3 tails, and that the Marquis himself led people around the mountain to capture it, and it was named in front of the emperor. Occasionally, someone joked that the little fox had become a spirit, but no one took it seriously. After all, it was all a joke. Jiyan put away the ivory jewelry, called Shui Ling to come forward, put the basket in her hand on the table, and said, "Auntie, the thing you told me about when you went home last time has been completed. I'd like to ask my uncle to send someone to those houses to tell them that everything is okay. In addition, the medicine packets in this basket have been labeled with their names and usage and dosage, and they must be sent to each house together after drinking the medicinal soup. You will be fine." Mrs. Liu was delighted when she heard this and her eyes were bright. "That's great. I'll send someone out to inform them." "Was this prescription written by Dr. Zhang?" Jiyan nodded, pinched a piece of snack to eat, and said, "Yes, Auntie, Grandpa Zhang found someone to test it and kept it for the symptoms. He has been obsessed with thinking about new medicines recently. Yesterday he was arguing that there were not enough ingredients. Mrs. Lu understood and nodded quickly. Oh, that's so rare. These girls are a blessing in disguise. I want to thank him for those girls. After saying that, she asked again, have your aunt and the Geo family made arrangements? Sister Aunt sent people into the city in the morning. I came to my uncle first and then went to Jia's house soon. I just happened to play with Beizu for a while. Jiyan finished eating the snacks, clapped her little hands, and asked for it unceremoniously. Auntie, your snacks are so delicious. I will give my niece a box and take it to eat with Beizu. Okay. Okay, okay. Mrs. Lu was extremely happy. She only has 2 sons, and she wishes she could treat Jiyan as her own daughter. Now that I saw that Jiyan was close to her, I felt even more comfortable. So, when the good news finally left the Lu family, there were only 4 snack boxes. In Jia's yard, Beizu was making his mother angry. Mom, you don't love me anymore. Why can't I go when my brother and the others can go to see the fun? Because they are young men, brave and not afraid of being exposed. Mrs. Jia nodded her daughter's forehead without giving in at all. You, a little girl, are going to see someone beheaded, and you are not afraid of having nightmares when you come back. At this time, the mother-in-law came to report that Princess Kangal was here. Before Mrs. Jia could respond, the orb had already scurried out like a rabbit. Soon she was holding hands with Jiyan and ran in with a smile. Mrs. Jia couldn't stop laughing, and quickly gathered herself together to serve tea and refill the charcoal basin. Jiyan was afraid of delaying the delivery of medicine, so he hurriedly explained the business first. Mrs. Jia smiled like a flower and immediately arranged for Xian Zhong's mother-in-law and maid to go out. Beizu accompanied Jiyan to visit Mrs. Jia. The two chatted with Mrs. Jia for a long time, making the old lady smile. Then they went back to Beizu's boudoir to enjoy the good time of eating, drinking, and gossiping among the girlfriends. At this moment, the shopping street was crowded with people, and Keishikao was filled with cries. The noble girls, now they also cried and died. It's not that their sweethearts are being beheaded, but, they are also afraid of death. The emperor had already said in the court before that anyone contaminated with hibiscus paste would be beheaded. I waited nervously for several days, but no official came to my door. But today is the day for beheading, and maybe at some point, they will be dragged out like dead dogs, with their heads lost. There is a large courtyard in the south of the city. It is also a famous scholarly family in Tianwu. The head of the family is named Gu. 2 brothers in the family are both biological children, and they are at the knees of their parents. The family is usually happy and lively, but today the door is closed and the house is silent. In the main courtyard, Mr. Gu and Mrs. Gu, Mr. and Mrs. Gu, Mr. and Mrs. Gu, as well as their widowed sister, Dean Gu, who is now a female student, all gathered in the main room. Mr. Gu's daughter-in-law, Gu Qingqing, is 28 years old, and she is as beautiful as a flower. But now her face was pale, her eyes were red and swollen, and she couldn't wipe away the tears. She looked as embarrassed as if she had been torn by a violent storm. Mom, I don't want to die, I'm scared. Gu Qingqing hugged her mother and cried bitterly. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 742. Chapter 742 Escape from Death. Mrs. Gu hugged her daughter and felt her trembling fear. She was so distressed that she wished she could die. My poor daughter, why was she harmed? If I had known today, my mother would never have let you go to a flower viewing party under any circumstances. Mrs. Guda also wiped her tears as she spoke. Mr. Gu couldn't bear to leave his wife and daughter, so he comforted them in a low voice. Don't worry, it's already this time, There's no movement in front of the door, maybe everything will be fine. Actually, he didn't even believe this in his heart. Because in the court hall that day, he clearly heard the emperor's golden words, anyone who is contaminated with hibiscus ointment will be beheaded. And my daughter, who is so eager to die, took hibiscus paste for the first time at the flower viewing party. Mrsq and her sister-in-law usually keep an eye on each other, but now they don't have that thought. Because she also has a daughter, who is 12 years old, and it will be time for her to get married in 2 years. If Dafang's niece is taken away and beheaded, her daughter will be implicated and her reputation will be ruined, and she will not be able to live well for the rest of her life. The more she thought about it, the more she gnashed her teeth in hatred and cursed, it's all the fault of the eldest princess and her wicked granddaughter. If they hadn't become Yaokai's lackeys, how could so many girls in the family suffer? It's time to strike with thunder and cut them into pieces with 1,000 knives, otherwise it will be difficult to eliminate the hatred in my heart. After saying that, she asked her close mother-in-law, have all the people you asked for been sent out? Yes, second madam, all the rotten vegetable leaves and rotten eggs in the kitchen have been taken away, the woman responded. The bystanders looked over curiously, and Mrsquer said, I am so angry that I sent someone to seek out the eldest princess Misfortune. Mrsq usually couldn't bear to see her younger siblings coming from a family of military commanders, but now for the first time, she found her work satisfying and satisfying. Dingu, who had been silent, also spoke, Ching Ching, don't cry. I'm going to ask Mrs when to ask for help. She is very close to Princess Kangol, and Princess Kangol is the apple of the eye of the new Ting Hao. With Princess Kangol coming forward, there will definitely be a change in this matter, not to mention. At this point, she stopped talking, causing everyone to rush. Little sister, tell me quickly, what's more? Is there anything we don't know? Mr. Gu asked, and couldn't help but walk to sit next to his sister. Dean Gu then said, actually, the day before yesterday, Marquise Inting had already found the nanny and secretly went to the homes of the girls who had taken hibiscus ointment many times to record confessions. Since Marquise Inting wanted to avoid the public eye on this matter, he had no intention of announcing the names of the girls. Our young man has only smoked once, and he didn't even record a confession, so it must be even worse. Is this true? Mrsq excitedly rushed to her sister-in-law, wanting to kneel down in front of her, asking questions repeatedly. Little sister, why didn't you tell me earlier? Oh, if that's the case, Ching Ching wouldn't have to behead her, right? Dingu nodded and responded calmly, sister-in-law usually dotes on Ching Ching too much. With this incident, I will be anxious for a few more days and I will teach Ching Ching more strictly in the future. Mrsq blushed, a little ashamed, and a little angry. Even if my sister-in-law wants to teach mother and daughter a lesson, she should not be raft in such a big matter. At this time, a woman suddenly came to report, Mrs Wen from Rujintan has sent someone. Everyone in the Gu family was shocked and quickly invited people in. Sister-in-law Kyan was wearing a green coat and skirt, with her black hair neatly combed. She carried a basket into the house and bowed to everyone in the Gu family in a proper manner. Dean Gu raised her hand to signal her to excuse herself, and then asked, but do you have any news from your wife about the matter I entrusted to you? Sister-in-law Kyan nodded and replied, a few days ago, Princess Kangol went to find the Marquis. Later, the Marquis found an opportunity to enter the palace and begged the Emperor again. The Emperor understands that the noble ladies of each family were confused for a while and were framed by the eldest princess and others, therefore, the noble ladies of each family are exempted from the blame and the list will not be announced to the public. As long as each family teaches strictly in the future to avoid making the same mistakes again. Woohoo, great, great, Mrsq was the first to cry with joy. Gu Qingqing also hugged her mother and burst into tears. Escape from death. Only these 4 words can express her mood at this moment. The rest of the Gu family members were also happy and comforted them one after another. After a long time, the room finally became quiet. Sister-in-law Kyan kept looking at her nose, and her nose looked at her heart. She never raised her eyes to take a second look. At this moment, she stepped forward and handed the basket in her hand to Dingu. Dingu, this is the miracle doctor who was entrusted by the princess to Sujintan. He prepared the medicinal materials and also wrote down the usage and dosage. Girls in your mansion, please feel free to take it. After 3 days, the hidden dangers left by hibiscus ointment will be completely eliminated. Dingu didn't expect such a comprehensive arrangement, so he quickly stood up and took it, saying, "When you get back, thank the princess and Mrs. Wen for me. I will definitely come to thank you personally one day." Sister-in-law Kyan saluted and then left. Of course the wife of the Gu family followed and stuffed a small purse. Dingu saw a rare smile, so he sent the basket to his sister-in-law and said, "Thanks to Princess Kangal and Mrs. Wen this time, sister-in-law, remember to prepare all the thank you gifts on the gift list and don't break her promise." Mrs. Gu didn't know if she had a brain twitch. Her subordinate hesitated a little and suddenly said something. Little sister, is this prescription reliable? Ching Ching is still a girl, so we can't just drink prescriptions from outside, in case it hurts our body." Dingu suddenly turned cold, dropped the basket, nodded to his parents, and walked away. Mrs. Gu was so embarrassed that she couldn't help complaining to her parents-in-law, "Father, Mother, I just asked a few more questions, but my little sister actually got angry." Mr. Gu said nothing and walked away, leaving space for his wife to teach his daughter-in-law. Mrs. Gu loved her widowed daughter the most, so she showed no mercy to her daughter-in-law and scolded her, "It's not like you don't know what kind of temper your little sister is. This time she is willing to come forward to ask for help because she feels sorry for you and Ching Ching, but you still act like this, as if she wants to harm Ching Ching." Then Mrs. Wen has been unhappy for more than 10 years, so she needs this miracle doctor from Broken Gold Beach to take care of her health, and now she's about to give birth. In this new capital, there are not even 10,000 but 8,000 people who want to ask for a prescription from this great Dr. Zhang. Your little sister is grateful to Mrs. Wen and Princess Kangal for their thoughtful thoughts, but you still dislike them. It's simply ignorant. Next time if something happens, don't come to your little sister, I feel bad for her. Mrs. Gu's face turned red with embarrassment when she heard that. She quickly stood up and bowed and apologized, "Mom, I was wrong. I really made a mistake at the moment. I'm going to prepare a thank you gift right now, and I'll go and apologize to my little sister later. Let's not talk about the Gu family, just say that the street more than a mile away from Keishikao is very lively at the moment. At the beginning, I didn't know who was taking the lead. In the blink of an eye, countless rotten vegetable leaves, rotten eggs, and even clods of soil and stones were thrown at the parade. Moreover, most of them are aimed at the eldest princess and her family. The eldest princess, who was usually aloof, now had vegetable leaves hanging on her head and egg yolk on her forehead, and she was yelling and swearing angrily. Baolei, who was following her, was not much better, as if she had just been fished out of a smelly ditch. Her hair and clothes were dripping with dirty water, and it was like a wild dog would take a detour when it saw it. Sending it at the third watch. I came back from outside and was delayed for a while. The update is late. Please forgive me, treasures. Group hug. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 743. Chapter 743, Cutting Off Life and Death with One Strike. The eldest princess pulled the rope, and the tired Baolei almost fell down. Baolei had been silent, but at this moment she completely exploded. She raised her foot and put it the eldest princess's leg. The eldest princess was hit hard and fell hard, causing her mouth to bleed. Before she could look back, Baolei was already riding on her back, clenching her fists and beating her wildly. "I'll beat you to death, I'll beat you to death, it's all your fault, you idiot, ugh, only your son is a human being, we are all animals, right? Back then, he spoiled his concubine, killed his wife, and killed my mother. You helped cover it up now, because of him, he got into trouble and his family was ruined. You are the one who deserves to die the most, you old witch, why haven't you been sentenced to death in Lingqi?" The eldest princess was stunned. The crowd who were still smashing vegetables and eggs were also stunned and subconsciously stopped. The eldest princess struggled and yelled, "Damn girl, are you crazy? I am your grandmother. You are so brave. Stop it." It's a pity that Baolei didn't listen at all and just kept fighting like crazy, as if he wanted to vent out all his years of resentment. The eldest princess was older and stronger after all, so she found an opportunity to press Baolei under her body and began to fight back. Grandfather and grandson staged a quarrel with each other in full view of the public. There were onlookers who kept cheering and making noises. "Beat, beat to death, it is a disaster, beat one to death and one less. That is, if there is no good thing, death will be peaceful. Now I know I was wrong, what did I do before?" By the time the guard officer pulled the two apart, the eldest princess's head and face were already covered in blood. Baolei had lost 2 teeth in her mouth and her nose was bruised and her face was swollen. The officers were not polite. They picked up the scabbard and gave each of them a few blows. They cursed, "My head is about to fall off. Why are you making a fuss? Let's go on the road happily and be a good person in the next life." After saying that, he shouted to the people in front of him to speed up. The eldest princess and Baolei had no time to say anything, so they were dragged forward and staggered forward. As for the precious son whom the eldest princess cared about so much, he was at the back of the team and passed out due to addiction to cigarettes. He was dragged directly on the road, his clothes and pants were torn, which was no different from death. Before Xi'an didn't become a new capital, it was just a state capital. The food market, used for beheading, never had a chance to be lively in several years. But this time it made up for the liveliness of the previous years. At this moment, a row of 10 wooden pillars were placed in the middle of the open space. 10 executioners, with red headscarves tied on their heads and only leather waistcoats, with black hair exposed on their chests, held shiny ghost head knives in their hands. The people watching quietly took a look, and they were all so frightened that they couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Behind the guillotine, there was a table and 3 chairs. Hinting Hao is sitting in the middle. On the left is Eunuch Feng from the palace, and on the right is the Minister of Punishment. These 3 people represent the presiding judge, the emperor, and the court. Gathered together, all the forces in Tianwu are united in their determination to uproot the hibiscus paste. Standing outside the field, waiting for the corpse for the family, even if we couldn't bear to cry, no one dared to come forward for pleasure or pull. Seeing that the sun was in the middle of the sky, the secretary of the Ministry of Justice said, "Master Marquis, can we start?" The Marquis was as taciturn as ever and just nodded. Eunuch Feng immediately took the imperial edict and began to read it out. Everyone knelt on the ground. Eunuch Feng read the poem in a cadence, but he actually didn't mean it. He occasionally glanced at the people who were about to be beheaded, feeling a little disgusted. Why did you accept such an errand? With eyes full of unfortunate people and ears full of pleading for mercy, it's really easy to have nightmares when you sleep at night. I must grab Aaron to go to Broken Gold Beach the next day, and I must go to the princess's conservatory to sit there for a while. Look at those blooming flowers and eat some refreshing fruits, otherwise you won't be able to get rid of this bad luck. He can be distracted here, but the others are listening extremely seriously. Once again it was confirmed that members of the family were going to be beheaded, and someone started crying again. But those who were sentenced to hard labor were left with the rest of their lives. They wanted to laugh, but they didn't dare to cry. They were stuck in the middle and were very embarrassed. On the other hand, the servants who were sent by their masters to inquire about the news were very happy and ran home happily. Because the lady in their residence was not on the list, and was not even mentioned in the imperial edict. Let alone being beheaded, no one will mention it again in the future. Anyone who dares to find trouble is disobeying the emperor's order. Soon, 10 people were pressed down in front of the wooden pillar. Among them, the eldest princess, the eldest princess's son, and Baolei occupy 3 positions. It's really because the public's anger against them is so great that the victims become perpetrators, and the poor people are also the most hateful. The eldest princess and Baolei, who had been fighting each other lively on the road, were now paralyzed with fear. They were almost dragged to the guillotine. The eldest princess muttered the same words over and over again. I am the eldest princess, and I want to see the emperor. It was Baolei, her eyes were empty, like a puppet. At this moment, her head was pressed on the wooden pillar, and there was only one thought left in her mind. How did her good years come to an end? If she had not been born into the Bao family, if she had not coveted Bianjian, if she... It's a pity that no one can give her the answer. The executioner sprayed a mouthful of strong wine onto the sharp blade, raised it high, and chopped it down with all his strength. There was a pop, blood spattered 3 feet, and the human skull rolled out. Whether it's good or bad, happiness or resentment, it's all over in one lifetime. In a tea house not far from Keishikau, in a small cubicle on the 2nd floor, the window was pushed open a crack. At this moment, the cold wind came in, and I turned around curiously. Then the pale-faced 3rd princess passed out on the chair, and the 2 nuns were so frightened that they almost peed their pants. They kept pinching the 3rd princess, splashing cold tea on their faces, and finally managed to get the 3rd princess to wake up. The 3rd princess fell into a trance and burst into tears. Wu, Baolei is dead, and her head is still rolling so far. Wu, she is looking at me. She hates me for bullying her, she hates me for not interceding for her. I wanted to beg for mercy, but my mother wouldn't let me. The 2 nuns were so regretful that their intestines were blue. Although they are the nuns who educate the princess, they are slaves after all. How can they seriously go against the princess's wishes? So the princess lost her temper and wanted to leave the palace, taking one last look at Baolei. They couldn't stop her, so they thought that if the princess gave up after seeing it, she would be able to serve her better in the future. How could I have imagined that I would be so unlucky? I just arrived here, went upstairs, and when I opened the window, I happened to see the execution, with heads rolling around. If the emperor and queen knew about it, their heads would not be saved either. One of the nuns quickly advised, Princess, please relax, you are overthinking. Miss Bao is doing her own thing and has nothing to do with you. Yes, Princess, she wanted to harm you before, have you forgotten? Another nanny also advised her. Let's go back to the palace quickly and find an imperial doctor to take a good look at you. You can't be frightened into falling ill. I can't afford it. The 2 of them worked together to take the 3rd princess out of the tea house and quickly returned to the palace. But after entering the palace, the 3rd princess insisted on seeing the emperor. I don't know what the 3rd princess said to the emperor this time. When she came out, except for her severely swollen eyes, her expression lost the resentment and arrogance of the past. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 744. Chapter 744. I was a little confused by the pie. Eunuch Feng also got his wish and went to Sujintan to give Jiyan the deed of the branch of the dim sum shop. Jiyan just came back from the city and suddenly found a shop. It was like a pie in the sky and left her confused. So, when Eunuch Feng was sitting in the greenhouse, eating grapes and watching the little eunuchs picking wool, Ji Yin quickly asked why. Eunuch Feng was also worthy of the big bunch of purple and black grapes in his hand. While eating, he told the story of how the third princess was frightened to death and then repented and grew up in an instant. At the end, he said, "Princess, the princess asked the emperor to give you this shop on her own initiative. The third princess said that after Bao Lei dies, the shop will be given to the princess, and the grudge between her and the princess will be settled." Ji Yin especially wanted to roll her eyes. The third princess said this as if Bao Lei's beheading was her own fault. Although she was in the middle and did play a role as a catalyst, basically it was the eldest princess and her family who sought their own death. However, no matter what, it is a good thing that the third princess will not find trouble in the future. To this end, Ji Yin picked a basket of various fruits for her with her own hands, and carefully weaved a lot of flowers around the basket. She dressed it up beautifully and asked Eunuch Feng to take it back. She is also a princess after all, she is just a little princess. When people offer her an olive branch, she always accepts it with a smile. What's more, this fruit basket is not only for the third princess, but also for the emperor and queen. Sure enough, Eunuch Feng sent the wool he collected back to the imperial study, and the emperor asked about it carefully. Hearing that good news, personally prepared a fruit basket for the princess, the two little girls turned their hostility into friendship, and the emperor was also happy. By chance, Nan Fang presented a batch of pens, ink, paper, and inkstones. With a wave of his hand, the emperor gave the good girl Ji Yin a box. On this day of good news, I really made a lot of money inexplicably. So much so that when the marquis came back in the evening, she was the first to rush out to report the good news. The marquis was afraid of the smell of blood on his body, so he bumped into his family members. He had just taken a shower and changed his clothes, and his hair was still wet with moisture. Ji Yin quickly took his adoptive father and sat beside the brazier. Just in time, Li Laozi also came back from the hot spring valley, and the newly melted snow soaked his cotton shoes. Hence, Ji Yin pulled her biological father over and sat next to the marquis. The marquis and generals, who are so prestigious outside, are now like children sitting in a row in front of the housekeeper's daughter, waiting to eat fruit. Others like Mrs. Li Lao, Tao Hongying, and others looked at it funny. Mrs. Li has always doted on her granddaughter without thinking. She always praised her. "We, Fu Niu, are so filial. We can't bear to see her father and adoptive father suffer a little bit." Ji Yin ran back to her grandma and gave her a big hug, and then she was busy giving her two fathers another bowl of hot tea. After finishing her work, she showed off her new shop and the 4 treasures of her study. Li Laozi heard about the location of the shop and secretly ventilated the air conditioner. Even if he saves his military salary for several years, he may not be able to buy half a room. When he goes out to fight again, he should try his best to kill the barbarians and seize more trophies. Otherwise, as a father, he would really have to rely on his daughter to support him in his old age. The marquis was not surprised, because the emperor had already told him when he entered the palace in the afternoon. Ji Yin smiled with eyes like crescent moons and said, "My mother is about to open a pickle shop, and I think the location of the branch is just right. The one I saw last time was pretty good, but it was a pity that it was temporarily cut off this time. I can do whatever I want with my shop." After saying that, she called her mother over and asked with a smile, "Mom, I will run the shop and you will make the recipe, and each of us will get half the profit. How about that?" Tao Hongying glared at her daughter angrily, laughed and cursed, "You little money lover, you and your mother know this clearly. Okay, let's go into the city tomorrow and check out the shops." Old Mrs. Li also agreed and spoke to support her granddaughter. "Fu Niu is right. Brothers have to settle accounts clearly. You are mother and daughter, so you have to settle accounts clearly." At this time, the Marquis called the soldiers outside the door and brought a fat man in. This fat man was the one who had done meritorious service before, and his name was Wang Fuegui. It's a pity that the old woman he wanted to rescue was secretly imprisoned by the people in Yaokai, and she died within a few days. Wang Fuegui was so heartbroken that he hardly ate or slept in the past few days. Everyone who watched felt pitiful. The Marquis had previously promised him to help save his mother, but now that he had not been able to save her, he felt a little ashamed. So, after finding out the details of Wang Fuegui, he informed the emperor that he planned to settle Wang Fuegui in the second village and continue to work as a cook. The veterans and wounded soldiers in the second village usually eat from big pots of rice. The cooks are all women from the village. The taste is definitely delicious, but it cannot be said to be delicious. Now having a cook can be regarded as a benefit to the veterans and wounded soldiers. In addition, the person behind Yaokai has not yet been found. Today, those who have their heads beheaded will be beheaded, and those who will be sent to hard labor will be sent to hard labor. Only Wang Fuegui, who is regarded as a traitor, is left. If the person behind the scenes becomes angry and seeks revenge from him, he can take the opportunity to seize some handles and clues. Wang Fuegui was very haggard, and he was a little thin and out of shape, but it could be seen that his eyes were pure and he did not look like a treacherous person. So, the Li family comforted him a few words, and finally asked the soldiers to send him to the second village, and handed him over to Xiaoqui and his wife to help him settle down. From now on, Wang Fuegui's wages will be recorded in the Marquis' account book. But during the New Year and festivals, any food given out by Erkan would be given to him. Soon, dinner was served and everyone sat around to eat. When Mrs. Li asked about what happened during the day, she said, "I heard that a small box of hibiscus ointment is worth 100 taels of gold. How many large boxes were burned today? It must be at least hundreds of thousands of taels, right? It would be great if the gold could be cashed in. It would be enough to support the expedition to conquer Jiangbei." Everyone nodded, and Li Laoer also said, "Yes, hundreds of thousands taels are enough to settle tens of thousands of refugees." There was nothing to say all night, and in the morning of the next day, Chen Chuan and Mr. Chen, after finishing their household affairs, took their families and returned home to continue their hard labor. I don't know what they went through after they returned home, but they obviously worked more seriously, with less resentment and perfunctory behavior than before. Everyone in the new village saw it, and although they were curious, they didn't ask any more questions. People are always responsible for their own mistakes. February 2nd, eat pig's head and hands. After eating with mouth watering, every household officially starts to get busy for the spring day. Wenjuan's due date was within this half month, so the family was busy preparing the delivery room and supplies. Li Zhensheng completely took over cyclamen, and the family would come back every night. Zhao Yuru even moved back from Luoan, preparing to welcome her grandson and take care of her daughter-in-law's confinement. Li Laoxi also wanted to see his grandnephew's little face before leaving, but unfortunately the military camp was busy. Furthermore, Li Yong has been holding on for almost a month. He has to rush over to take over and let Li Yong come back to stay for a few days, otherwise the twins will not recognize their father. As a result, as soon as Li Laoxi left, his son Jiaran came back from Luoan. Mr. Wen has already visited the academy and personally requested from Dean Zhou that Jiaran be allowed to study as a day student. Dean Zhou thinks highly of Jiaran and is very clear about his studies, so he naturally supports his better development. Jiaran will still have to return to the academy to prepare for the national examination in the future. The academy will definitely deserve no less honor. Dan Jiaran went home to have dinner with his grandma and family, but he proposed that he would like to live in a small courtyard in the city forever. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 745. Chapter 745 Top Priority. It was easier for him to make friends, and it was even easier for him to learn to run a garden and a relief agency with his father. Of course, he will often go home for a short stay. Old Mrs. Lee was a little disappointed, but then she thought about it. The city is so close to Sujintan. From now on, her grandson will no longer be bound by the academy and can come back anytime he wants. So, she nodded. When everyone in the family agrees, no one else can stop it. So, on a day with good weather, Mrs. Lee, Tao Hongying, and Jiyan took a car into the city to help Jiren pack his luggage. As a precaution, Zhao Yuru stayed at home to guard Wenjuan. Mr. Wen originally lived in this small courtyard in Jiren for a long time. Even now that he is occasionally busy and late, he will come and stay temporarily. To show respect, Jiren still left the main room to Mr. Wen, and chose the east wing for his daily living. There are 3 rooms in the east wing, and one on the south side is used as a bedroom. The room next to the bedroom is the stove. When boiling water or cooking, the big kong in the bedroom will be heated. In summer, if you don't like the hot kong, you can also pull a baffle between the stove and simply modify the flue, so that the big kong will not be hot. The main room in the middle is equipped with tables and chairs for entertaining guests and eating. The room on the north side is the study room, with almost 3 walls lined with bookshelves, containing hundreds of books moved back from Luoan Academy. These books came from the Guo family and have been kept in the academy for so long. They have benefited many teachers and students and helped Jiren make many good friends. Nowadays, the academy has basically copied one copy, and the copy belonging to the Li family can be taken back. Jiyan is happier than anyone else about the fact that his brother lives alone. She has been busy picking out things for her brother in the space these days, and she really has a lot of fun. Just as excited as leaving home to go to college in a previous life. At this moment, she carefully prepared the paintings on the walls of the study, the small ornaments on the Duobao pavilion, the 4 treasures of the study on the desk, etc. She even placed several pots of blooming flowers in several rooms. The bedroom is filled with jasmine that exudes a long fragrance, the main room is filled with festive and lively kumquats, and the study is filled with elegant clivia. Mrs. Lee and Tao Hongying helped Jiren lay out new bedding and fold clothes and shoes. Seeing this, Jiren swallowed back the words that were on his lips. He has long since learned to take care of himself and take care of his own food, clothing, housing, and transportation. However, his family is busy with other things, but they still care and love him. When the sun rose to the middle of the sky, Jie Huan rushed over from Cyclamen with a food box. Seeing that everything was neat and tidy, he smiled and said, "I was still thinking about helping with the work, but I didn't expect to be late. It's all a trivial matter, how can I use your help?" Mrs. Lee pulled the honest grandson and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Needless to say, noon is the busiest time in the restaurant. In order to come over, the family must have been standing in front of the stove frying and frying without stopping. Thinking of this, Mrs. Lee felt distressed, but she also became more and more proud. Others have many children and grandchildren at home, and they are afraid of the children quarreling. But in the Lee family, it is absolutely impossible. The older brothers take care of their younger brothers, and the younger brothers are considerate of their older brothers. It is a rare harmony. Sure enough, Jie Huan opened the food box and found several dishes that Jiren loved to eat. The family, young and old, cleaned the table and were about to put the food on the table and start eating when there was a knock on the courtyard door. Go Sheng ran to open the door and welcome Jie Su and Lu Zong in. They also brought food boxes, obviously to congratulate Jiren on his new home. They didn't expect that all the young and old of the Li family were there, so they hurriedly saluted. Old Mrs. Lee smiled and invited them to eat together. When chatting about gossip, she asked them why they were not in class in the academy. Jie Su and Lu Zong originally had their student status in the academy. They didn't have to study every day. They just had to go back during exam time. Now that Jiren is studying day to day, they also followed suit and left the academy. In the future, Jiesu will try to take over the family business and gain some experience. Luzong also had to run the family business and interact with family friends and relatives in Zindu. But Jiesu still has to live at home and be bound by the rules of the family. Luzong does have his own yard, but he has to act like a prince all the time, which makes him very tired. So, the two of them came up with the idea of Jiren, a small courtyard. The two of them thought about occasionally coming to live together for 3 or 2 days and have a taste of freedom. Unexpectedly, the first time I came to the door, I bumped into several members of the Li family. Fortunately, when the sun set in the west, Mrs. Li and others left. The small courtyard has completely become a world for young people. Dinner was not as sumptuous as lunch, but it was only food to go with wine, so all three of us were inevitably half drunk. Jiyan visited her eldest brother's small courtyard, and after returning home, she finally began to pay attention to the princess's mansion that she had forgotten. It is a coincidence that Lord Zhou came to visit the next day and talked about the continued construction of the princess's mansion. The good news is of course 10,000 supports. If you want money, give money, and if you want something, give something. As a result, the princess mansion continued construction smoothly. The craftsmen didn't wait to start work, so each of them received a red envelope of 2 taels of silver for starting work. Surprised, everyone became more attentive. Jiyan originally wanted to get involved a little more and try her best to create a new home that suited her needs. But the eldest brother sent someone home to ask for a fruit basket, and also asked his sister to help him pull a red thread. It turns out that Jiren wanted to visit the Singh family and discuss their studies with Mr. Singh. Of course, the main purpose was to meet his sweetheart. Jiyan is gearing up to help her brother marry his sister-in-law, which is a top priority. She carefully prepared the fruit basket and held a pot of ink orchids. The brother and sister arrived at Singh's house. Molan gave it to Mr. Singh and took the fruit basket to the back house. Mr. Singh's official position is not high, but he is in the court after all, so he naturally knows about the hibiscus ointment case. During this period, girls in Zindu must try their best to get rid of any contamination with hibiscus ointment. Those who are not related to each other at all, like Wanur, live in seclusion to prevent others from making random guesses and ruining their reputation for innocence. So, apart from sending a pair of shoes to Mrs. Li and 2 boxes of hand-baked snacks to Divine Dr. Zhang, Wanner never visited Broken Gold Beach after the new year. Now that the good news has come, Wanner was extremely happy. After asking carefully for a long time, she felt relieved. Mrs. Singh was also chanting the Buddha's name while she was listening. Singh, on the other hand, seemed to have a thorn in his butt, sitting on the chair and twisting from side to side. Finally finding an opportunity, he started to make a fuss. "Mom, my sister and I have been trapped at home for almost 20 days. Every time we want to go out, you always say that there is chaos outside. Now that the princess and brother Jiren are here, everything must be fine outside. Just be merciful and let my sister and I go out for a walk. Let's not wander around and go to the snack shop to have a cup of milk tea and a piece of bihun cake, okay?" Mrs. Singh loved her youngest son and saw her daughter blushing. She guessed that she also wanted to talk to her future husband and get to know him better, so she nodded. So, after waiting for another half an hour, Mrs. Singh let Mr. The 4 of them took a car all the way to the shopping street, sat at a snack shop, brought some snacks, and then went to Baiwan Garden. The good news led Singh to eat snacks and play around, leaving enough space for the eldest brother and future sister-in-law to whisper. Jiren was very measured and worried that the Singh family would miss them, so he sent Wanner and her brother back before lunch. Sure enough, Mr. Singh and Mrs. Singh were very satisfied. It also laid a good foundation for Jiren to ask Wanner out again in the future. Ji-Yan finished assisting her brother and happily took the car back to Broken Gold Beach. Yu Yushin was driving, and Dongmei and Shuiling were accompanying him. Jiren felt relieved and did not send his sister off. As a result, as soon as the carriage left the city, it didn't go very far when it encountered a fast horse. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 746. Chapter 746. The stars are falling on my house. Before Dongmei opened the window to take a look, Yeshan had already called out to the person coming, "Zhenghe, where are you going?" Zhenghe tightened the reins of his horse and shouted loudly, "The second young master is about to give birth. The old lady asked me to find the second young master and come back. Go quickly, go quickly." Yeshan quickly waved his hand, signaling him to continue on his way. In the carriage, both Jiyan and Dongmei could hear clearly. Jiyan said excitedly, "Uncle Shan, go quickly, go home and see your nephew." Yeshan smiled and raised the riding whip in his hand. The bay red horse was threatened by the whip and ran very fast. It didn't take long to reach the new village. Jiyan jumped out of the carriage, picked up her skirt and ran towards the yard. Old Mrs. Lee is running circles in the backyard. Previously, the family had already converted a spare apartment into a delivery room. At this moment, Zhao Yuru, sister-in-law Lu, Aunt Wu, and Po Wen, invited by Xiaoang Zhuang, were busy inside, and Wen Juan's low screams of pain were heard from time to time. Seeing her granddaughter come back, Mrs. Lee hugged her granddaughter, as if she had found a backbone, and asked repeatedly, "Fu Niuer, you said your sister-in-law will give birth to the child smoothly, right?" Jiyan nodded heavily, giving Grandma a big reassurance. "Of course, Grandma, don't worry, my sister-in-law will give birth to a fat and healthy nephew smoothly." Mrs. Lee immediately beamed, hugged her granddaughter and swayed her around. Okay, we Fu Niuer are the most blessed. Whatever Fu Niuer says can come true." At this time, Tao Hongying came out of the small stove with a bowl of chicken soup noodles. Seeing how tired the grandfather and grandson were, she smiled and said, "Mom, Wenjuan has just started, and she will be born in a while. Take Fu Niuer and sit in front. Dr. Zhang is probably coming soon. We are here, so there will be no problem." Old Mrs. Lee nodded and replied, "I am really old and useless. I remember when I gave birth to Fu Niu, I didn't worry about it that much. I can't help you now, my hands and feet are weak, and my head is buzzing." Jiyan waved to her mother, then helped her grandma forward, smiling and coaxing her. "My grandma is not old. When I get married, I will have my grandma to take care of me when I have children." Orange Mrs. Lee patted her granddaughter gently. "Oh, shameless, we are grown-up girls, we can't say that again in the future, others will laugh if they hear us." While he was talking, Divine Dr. Zhang had already arrived. The village chief and Uncle Zhao came over to join in the fun after hearing the news. They sat in the main room drinking tea and chatting. Physician Zhang Su saw that Mrs. Lee was a little nervous and comforted her. "I will check on Jia Huan's daughter-in-law's pulse every 3 to 5. Today's production is ready and there will be no problem. Let's all wait for the good news." Sure enough, Mrs. Lee's complexion improved a lot. The village chief also smiled and said, "Think about when we were fighting for our lives in the mountains, we were afraid that some man would say that my mother-in-law was pregnant. That was not a happy event, it was simply bad news. Look at today, our life is prosperous. Children who come to be reincarnated at this time are blessed, especially those born in the Li family will simply fall into the pit of good fortune." Everyone nodded and smiled in agreement. After chatting like this for a while, the family members hurried back. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he was still a little confused. He didn't know whether to say hello to the elders first or to visit his wife first. Old Mrs. Lee didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so she walked out and gave her grandson a push. Go to your wife quickly and talk to her through the window. She is giving birth to your child. Don't make her angry. Hey, hey. Jia Huan strode to the backyard, and soon heard him shouting in a loud voice, Wenjuan, I'm back. You have a good childbirth, don't be afraid. When you are finished, I will stew crystal elbows for you. Everyone in the front yard was silent for a moment, and then they all laughed. As expected of a cook, at a time like this, all he promised and encouraged his daughter-in-law was food, and the dish was a big deal. In the delivery room, Zhao Yuru and others couldn't help laughing. Wenjuan was so ashamed that she almost wanted to find a crack in the ground and crawl into it. Those who don't know may think she is greedy and lazy. At dark, Li Lao'er, Mr. Wen and Li Zhensheng all rushed back from the city and gathered in the front hall to wait for the birth of the fourth generation of the Li family. Perhaps the little guy felt that the cards were enough, and finally struggled hard and left his mother's belly. Wenpo was so tired that she was sweating, but she couldn't help but laugh while holding the fat baby in her arms, and shouted, "Oh, it's a fat boy with a handle. This guy weighs more than 7 pounds. Soon, the news was received from the front, and everyone stood up and said congratulations with a smile. Mrs. Lee was so happy that she couldn't open her mouth from ear to ear. She ran to the backyard to see her grandson's daughter-in-law, as if there was wind under her feet, and then carried her infant great-grandson to the front yard. Everyone gathered around and praised the fat boy for his good looks. Jiyan crossed her legs and tried hard to see her nephew clearly. I remember that in my previous life, a college classmate got married and gave birth to a child. She went to visit and once took a look at the newborn child. His skin was red and his face was full of wrinkles. He looked like a little monkey and was extremely ugly. At that time, she was praising the child's beauty, but in fact, she was surprised and complained in all kinds of ways. But the little nephew in front of me has black and thick hair and a white face. I wonder if he is hungry, but he is pouting with a red little mouth. He is as cute as he wants. Jiyan couldn't help but raise her hand and tap his little face. The fat boy actually opened his eyes at this moment. At that moment, Jiyan seemed to see the most dazzling star in the world. Grandma, my nephew's nickname is Seeing Seeing, okay. Look, his eyes are stars. Mrs. Lee has a mysterious trust in her granddaughter. After hearing this, she nodded immediately, okay, the fat boy's nickname will be Seeing Seeing. As for the daimyo, give your uncle and the others a headache. Li Seeing Seeing, the fat boy of the fourth generation of the Li family, chirped twice and lazily closed his eyes. I don't know if I acquiesce to this name or if I don't care at all. Early on the 8th day of February, everyone in the Li family got up early and got busy. There is no other reason. Today is the third day of bathing for the children of Seeing Seeing. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Mrs. Lu, Mrs. Jia Mrs. Seeing, etc. all arrived in carriages. Mrs. Li accompanied them and said a few words, then went to see Wenjuan. Thanks to Jiyan's space, most of the fruits and vegetables Wenjuan ate since she was pregnant were produced by the space. Although these fruits and vegetables do not have the miraculous effects of human flesh and bones, they taste good and contain a touch of spiritual energy. They can still be used to maintain health if eaten for a long time. So, Wenjuan is in good health and does not have the vomiting, cramps, edema and other conditions that other women must experience during pregnancy. Even now that the birth is over, the lochia has been successfully drained, and the grain bag is bulging. Let the children of Seeing Seeing eat until they are full and vomit every time. In just 2 days since he came into this world, little Seeing Seeing has already achieved a lot, and he is as fat as a meatball. New life always makes people think of the word hope. Facing such a child, no one can put the smile on their face. Everyone gathered around the child and there was so much to talk about. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 747. Chapter 747 The God of Wealth Passing By. It wasn't until the front came to urge her that Mrs. Lee took the child and went out. In the hall, Po Wen, who delivered the baby the day before, suddenly transformed into the midwife. She hugged Xing Xing with one hand, gently scooped up some water with the other hand, and patted Xing Xing's face and forehead. Xing Xing didn't understand what was going on. He expressed his anger with his hands and feet, and started to cry while tearing his neck. The onlookers burst into laughter. "Okay, ring the basin, this is a strong boy. Haha, your voice is so bright and energetic." Mrs. Lu, Mrs. Jia Mrs. Xing, Mrs. Wen and others, while praising, threw the gold and silver in their hands into the copper basin. They retreated, and the women in the village, such as Huaniyang, Xiaoqui, sister-in-law Lu, stepped forward and threw another wave. Although I exchanged silver dimes and copper coins this time, it still made the grandma who was the first child smile so much that she grinned from the corners of her mouth to her ears. Because according to the rules, everything thrown into the basin must be given to her. As a result, she got busy more and more efficiently, and she kept saying happy words one after another. The men gathered outside to watch the fun, but also blocked the naughty cold wind for fear of blowing the fat boy. Li Laosan couldn't help but stretch his neck and looked at his eldest grandson carefully, proud and excited. Mr. Peng, my grandfather, also came, stroking his beard. I don't know if he thought of his deceased wife, and his eye circles were slightly red. Jiaran, Brother Li, and Brother Mao surrounded Jiawen in the middle, and they were all envious. Brother Cat, this naughty boy, even said, "When can I get a wife? I also want to have a son." Everyone was amused and laughed, and raised their hands to ruffle the boy's hair. "You brat, you haven't even grown hair on your mouth yet, and you're already thinking about having a son. That is, you are going to marry a wife at a young age. Can you make money to support the family? Have you saved up enough for the betrothal gift?" Brother Cat raised his chest unconvinced and said angrily, "Of course I have a way, just wait and see. I will definitely be very rich in the future. Not to mention marrying one daughter-in-law, I can have 10 or 8 wives." Jiaran patted his younger brother and reminded with a smile, "Concubines are not allowed in our family." Brother Cat immediately changed his mind, then marry a wife and have 10 or 8 sons. Everyone laughed even harder, and no one took this kid's words seriously. Soon, the 3 baths were over, and Xing Xing was carried back to the backyard. The banquet in the front yard began. The grandma who gave birth was worried that there was a woman in their village who was going to give birth at any time, so she took the gold and silver in the copper basin and the extra 10 taels of silver given by the Li family, plus a large piece of meat and a box of snacks, and returned with satisfaction. Gone home. As usual, the people sitting in the front yard are old and young men, and the backyard is where the female relatives gather. The women did not drink. When they were full, they cleared the table, served fruits and snacks, and chatted. Mrs. Jia and Mrs. Lu saw that there were no outsiders, so they whispered a few words. It turns out that the ladies who had escaped death had already prepared thank you gifts. Because they didn't want to be speculated by gossip, each family did not send them directly to Sujintan, but transferred them from the Jia family and the Lu family. The two of them discussed it and took this opportunity to pull them over and send them to the Marquis's yard. Hearing the good news made her heart itch, and she wished she could go over and take a look immediately. However, she was afraid that everyone would laugh at her for being a money-mad, so she could only sit next to her grandma and act like a little lady. Unfortunately, she frequently lost her focus, causing everyone to notice the clues and laugh non-stop. Finally, we saw off the guests in the afternoon. Jian led his brothers and rushed directly to the next door. The noble ladies of those families had been in fear for a long time, and finally escaped death, but they were not afraid of the consequences. They were also really grateful to Jian as their savior, so they were very generous. In addition to what was on the previous gift list, an additional 20% was added. Jian classified the medicinal materials and sent them to divine Dr. Zhang, which was regarded as the old man's hard work in researching the prescription. From all the other satin fabrics and furs, Jian picked out a suitable piece and planned to make a quilted robe for her adoptive father, which was suitable for the season. After all, without my adoptive father, things would not have gone so smoothly. The rest are sent back to the family's warehouse, waiting for grandma to sort them out when she has time. The family can make clothes, shoes, and socks, or carry out gifts. Jian divided the remaining rare jades in detail. Yantai, brush washing and jade ornaments are given to the second uncle, eldest brother, and sixth brother. The golden toad's four-legged incense burner is given to my uncle, and the python skin riding crop is given to my father. In short, basically everyone in the family, young and old, has a share. Finally, the most common thank you gifts are various kinds of jewelry. There are more than 30 sets of gold, silver, precious stones, jade, ivory, agate, etc. in total. In addition, there are whole boxes of pearls, gemstones, and even a few pieces of high-grade mutton fat jade, soapstone, etc. It can be said that the value of these things together must be more than 10,000 taels, which is enough to make a generous dowry. Having a great time picking and choosing the good news. At dinner time in the evening, everyone in the family received their own share of gifts. Old Mrs. Lee held the silk and satin cloth sheet and held the 5 blessings and longevity hairpin on her head. She really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Our lucky girl is really obsessed with money. Her eyes shine when she sees gold. But when it comes to spreading wealth, it is really generous, and sharing things is for everyone. I see, this girl is like a passing of wealth. The more you gain, the more you get out. Jian got into Grandma's arms and said coquettishly, Grandma was wrong. All the things were given to our family. The wealth is still in our house. If it didn't run out, it doesn't count as loose wealth. Mrs. Lee hugged her granddaughter, kissed her on the forehead, and sighed, everyone says you are the most favored in the family, so you don't have to worry about anything. Actually, you just have a delicate mind, and you are the most overthinking. Everyone in your family is taken care of by you. The good news crept up in Grandma's arms, and her heart felt as warm as a jar of honey. Grandma, don't worry, when my brothers all marry their sisters-in-law, I won't care about them anymore. From now on, just take care of Grandma and dress her up as the most beautiful old lady in Tianwu. Mrs. Lee was coaxed into laughing, I'm afraid Grandma will be scolded as an old goblin. Not to mention how lively the Lee family's place is, I just want to say that the Singh family in the city has just had dinner and their children have returned to their rooms. Mrs. Singh took her husband and whispered together. Master, Wanner's marriage must be finalized as soon as possible and cannot be delayed any longer. Mrs. Singh frowned, raised her hand to pour tea for her husband, and said this, making Mr. Singh glare. Why, madam, when you went to Lee's house today, did you see anything wrong? Mrs. Singh smiled angrily and replied, why are you so confused? If the Lee family does not do well, how can I get engaged as soon as possible? Mr. Singh breathed a sigh of relief, and did not dare to make his wife angry, so he quickly admitted his mistake. Okay, it's all my fault. Then tell me, why do you need to get engaged early? Although Wanner has reached the age of marriage, you have been in poor health in the past few years, and she has been in charge of the house, which is very hard. As a father, I feel that I owe her, and I want to keep her in her parents' family for 2 more years and save her a dowry. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 748. Chapter 748. Mr. Singh's desire for survival is overwhelming. Mrs. After saying that, she carefully talked to her husband about what she saw at the Lee family today. Master, you don't know that the father of today's child, Jia Huan, is the eldest son of the third family. His character is not bad, but he can't study well and only likes to cook. So, he usually follows the eldest son of the Li family to help in Zion Ki Le, and it is said that he can stand alone. The child's mother, Wen Juan, is from a good background. She is the daughter of a professor at Luoan Academy. She can write and do math. But he was not taught by his mother since he was a child, and he was treated harshly by his father's concubine, and his life was not easy. It stands to reason that such a young couple would not be valued in the family, or even their entire third family. After all, they cannot be granted the title of Marquis or Prime Minister, and they cannot shine on the family lintel. But I took a closer look today, from the old lady to the princess to a few children. Everyone in the Li family did not look down upon the third house at all. Even the confinement rice that Wen Juan ate was made by her mother-in-law and aunt, because she was worried about the maids and women. And there are no rules in their family that men cannot enter the room and take care of the confinement wife. I even saw Jiawen serving chicken soup to Wen Juan and holding the child to sleep. Isn't this is against the rules? It's too ridiculous. Mr. Singh was surprised and asked with some disapproval, but was immediately bombarded by his wife. What's wrong with the rules? Besides, you men set the rules. Who cares whether we women are willing or not? Mrs. Singh was so angry and sad when she thought of the past events that she wiped away her tears. At first, I was fine when I gave birth to Wanur, but giving birth to Brother Ning hurt my body. I lay in bed for 2 whole months with pain everywhere, drank endless medicine, and had to endure the cynicism from my mother-in-law. I really wanted to see you and talk to you at that time, but you knew how to abide by the rules and didn't come into my room for 2 months. You could only ask me a question outside the window. You don't know how sad I am. I have been suffering from confinement disease for so many years. I feel uncomfortable physically, but actually feel even worse in my heart. Mr. Singh was stunned when he heard this. He wanted to say that all men were like this, but when he saw his wife crying, he couldn't bear it and could only quickly persuade her. Madam, I was wrong. I was too young back then and didn't understand this, so you suffered. Mrs. Singh also knew that her resentment at this time was indeed unreasonable. After all, too many years had passed, and all men in the world were like this, not just her husband. But it is precisely because of this that the men of the Li family are unique and valuable. If the husband can comfort the daughter during her confinement period and take care of the child together, the daughter will definitely be happy and not be as resentful as she is. Okay, I don't blame you, but Wanur must marry into the Li family as soon as possible. Mrs. Singh wiped her tears and declared almost through gritted teeth. Okay, get married immediately. Tomorrow, ask someone to invite my sister over, and you and your sister-in-law will discuss what to do if you are happy. Mr. Singh's desire for survival was overwhelming, and his head was nodding like a chicken digging rice. In the end, Mrs. Singh was coaxed to smile. The new member of the Li family, little Singh Singh, is not only fair, fat, and cute, but he also inherited his aunt's cute skills. You are only a few days old now, and you already know how to coax people. No matter who hugs him, he will open his eyes wide and giggle non-stop. Anyone who sees their own reflection in his clear eyes will have their heart melted. Jiyan will visit this little nephew whenever he has free time during the day. She has forgotten all about the space, the greenhouse, and the princess's mansion. On this day, Mrs. Jia brought the orb and succeeded in pulling her away from her nephew. Mrs. Jia couldn't help hugging the fat boy. She loved him very much. She said a few words to Wen Juan and then accompanied Mrs. Li to sit next door. Hearing that the Singh family intended to arrange the marriage between Wanur and Jiaran, Mrs. Li was certainly happy. Wanur, a girl, is very atmospheric, will be a director, and the needle line is good, mainly because I still have to like it. As long as she marries into the family and her eldest grandson has such a virtuous wife, Mrs. Li won't have to worry about her second wife. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru finished their chores and came over to join in the fun when they heard the commotion. Everyone ate the fruit and soon the matter was settled. The matchmaker invited Dean Zhou of Luoan Academy. Luoan Academy had a very good reputation, and the dean was also a highly respected person. Secondly, Mr. Singh and Mr. Li are both familiar with the dean. Of course, if it is inconvenient for the dean, Mrs. Li will personally go to the Lu family to ask Mr. Lu to come forward. The old man is getting older. I heard that he has a cough recently. Yesterday, he was sent a basket of snow pears. As a last resort, the Li family did not want to work for his old man. As for the date of getting married, after all the etiquette has been fulfilled, it will be around May or June. Then, find a husband to calculate and decide which day is a good day. In the afternoon, after seeing off Mrs. Jia and Beza's mother and daughter who were well fed and drunk, Mrs. Li quickly called her eldest grandson back from the city. Jiaran was also surprised that the Singh family agreed to the marriage so quickly. He wondered if it was the orchid that completely captured the heart of the future father-in-law. But whatever the reason, it's a happy event. On the second day, Li Lao took his son and rushed to Luoan Academy, taking Li Lao San back to look after the cafeteria. Li Lao San, a new grandpa, smiles from ear to ear every day and walks around the door of the backyard, hoping that everyone will hold their children and give him a look. But as a father-in-law, he couldn't help much at home, so his daughter-in-law kicked him back to Luoan Academy. Getting married is a happy event, especially when the Li family and the Singh family have a tacit understanding. Going to a matchmaker to propose marriage is just a formality, there will be no twists and turns, and you will get a matchmaker gift for free. Therefore, Dean Zhou readily agreed and made an appointment with the Li family to pick him up in a car 3 days later. Then, he smiled and accepted a pot of cuckoos and a large fruit basket donated by Li Lao. Jiaran is the grandson of Li's family and the leader of the third generation. Moreover, his father still has a title, so it will most likely fall on him in the future. Hence, from every aspect, Jiaran's marriage was much more grand than Jiawen's. Even, at a dinner time, Mrs. Li specifically discussed with the whole family whether they should rush to repair the Earl's mansion and marry their eldest grandson's daughter-in-law in the city. From now on, Jiaran and Wan'er will be allowed to live in the Earl's mansion permanently, and they will also help the family take care of some interpersonal matters. The family also has a big place to stay in the city, so they can live in a new place occasionally. Everyone naturally gave 10,000 support, and even the good news sent all the craftsmen from the princess's mansion to come over. Only Jiaran is worried that Jiawen will feel uncomfortable. As a result, Jia Huan was so focused on his wife and son that he didn't take this matter to heart at all. As for Wen Juan, ever since she entered the Li family, she felt like she had fallen into a pit of good fortune. She could wake up from her dreams with a smile. Furthermore, she was originally married to a cook, and she had never expected glory that did not belong to her. She just wants to keep her husband and children, and live a peaceful and happy life with food, clothing, and warmth. Jiaran understood what his brother and sister-in-law were thinking, felt completely relieved, and went about his business in the city. Jiyan was also looking through her account books, trying to find something good to put in her eldest brother's betrothal gift. At this time, Shui Ling came in from the outside and reported, "Princess, Uncle He wants to see you." Hence the third update. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 749. Chapter 749 Women will only delay my drawing of the sword. Uncle He, Jiyan was stunned for a moment and quickly asked Shuiling to invite people to the front yard for tea. Then she tidied up and hurried over. Lao He was holding his teacup and grimacing. This is the first month of the new year, and not only has he lost weight, he has also lost weight. Because it was too frustrating to be trapped in the village and unable to get out. Originally planned to leave at the end of the first month, but the hibiscus ointment case came up, which involved too many areas. The Marquis was afraid that someone would come to Sujintan to cause trouble, so he asked them to stay for a while. This stay will last until mid-February. If I don't go out, less than half of the year will have passed. Almost as soon as the good news came out, he stood up and saluted, and then started complaining. Princess, have you forgotten us? Jiyan feels guilty. There are too many things at home to take care of. She quickly said, of course not, Uncle He, I was just sorting out the booklet, it's almost done. You guys pack your luggage and you can set off in 3 days. Seriously, Lao He was so happy that he stood up immediately, then I will go back and tell my brothers and pack my luggage quickly. After saying that, he hurriedly said goodbye and left. Mrs. Lee came back from Wen's house next door. She was very confused when she saw this, and asked, Old He, what's going on? What are you doing in a hurry? Eager to go out. Jiyan told the story again, and Mrs. Lee couldn't help but laugh and said, these people just can't control their temper at home. However, the village chief is looking for a wife for the second village. You can also ask Lao He and the others. If anyone is interested, leave an extra section. I know, Grandma. Jiyan also remembered this and asked Shuiling to catch up with Lao He. As a result, Shuiling quickly brought back a sentence. Uncle Lao He said that they don't want to marry a wife for the time being, which will delay their travels in the world. Let's talk about it this winter. The good news is really dumbfounding. This is a vivid interpretation of the sentence, does a woman delay the speed of drawing my sword? She didn't have time to joke anymore, so she found an excuse to hide in the space and started writing the booklet. Chuanzhou Prefecture is in a similar location to Sichuan in the previous life, and the climate and culture are similar. This trip, the main task is to find medicinal materials, and I also need to bring back some special products when I see them. 3 days later, Lao He and the others brought enough silver, took their road guides and tokens from the Marquis mansion, hid their sharp sabers and daggers, and set off in a hurry. As soon as they left, the Yulao team in the village went to the village chief to report the results. It can be said that there are many good girls in Shiliba village, and I heard that I am very happy to marry into the new and second villages. But they are targeting the young people in the new village with rich families and strong backers, not the veterans and wounded soldiers in the second village. Of course there is nothing wrong with this idea. There is nothing wrong with people wanting to choose a good man for a lifelong event. But the Yulao team is in embarrassment. Have they completed their mission? The village chief also had a headache, so he asked, are these girls really good? Of course, village chief, an aunt raised her voice and said, the 2 girls I visited are both good-looking and tall. At home, I am also filial to my parents and diligent, and my neighbors are full of praise. And the family is small, with no grandparents or a large family of uncles and brothers to hold me back. It is perfect for such a family to be the in-laws. The other aunts also nodded and agreed, praising how excellent the girl they liked was. The village chief was so noisy that he had a headache, so he sent them home to rest, and then ran to hang out under the archway. By chance, Mr. Ho and Li Laosi came back from the military camp. They wanted to come back when the stars were born, but they were blocked by things. They had free time today, so they hurried home to take a look. Seeing the village chief wandering around on the road, the 2 of them got off their horses and said a few words to the village chief. This is a rare opportunity, so the village chief quickly told the matter. Sure enough, No matter what happens to the Marquis, it doesn't matter. The Marquis waved his hand and said, "Uncle, you don't have to worry about this. Just show these girls to the younger generation in the village. As for the people in the second village, I have already asked the steward of the home mansion to go out and buy people, and I just brought back more than 30 women the day before yesterday. Right now, I'm just sorting things out in the Marquis mansion, learning the rules, and I'll be here in a few days. They are all from poor families and have no way to make a living, so they don't pick and choose between veterans and wounded soldiers. They just want to have a place to stay and survive. At that time, the chief steward will send someone over, and I'd like to ask you to take more trouble." The village chief uncle was very happy. "No, no, Mr. Marquis is polite. This is great, it solves a big problem." The two invited the village chief to go home for tea, but the village chief waved his hand and refused, running to the Yulau team as if there was wind under his feet. There are indeed a few young men in the village who are old enough to marry wives, and there are also single men who have to support their families. Now that the wounded veterans have hope, he must quickly help the village find those good girls. In the backyard, Mrs. Li was talking to Zhao Yuru. Wenjuan had her hair wrapped and hugged her fat son sideways, with a smile that could not fall from the corner of her mouth. Jiyan was sitting next to her sister-in-law. Seeing her nephew sleeping soundly, she couldn't help but stretched out her fingers and quietly tapped her little nephew's tender tofu-like face. The fat boy wrinkled his nose because his sweet dream was disturbed, and then continued to sleep. Jiyan's fingers chased after her and she wanted to tease her a few more times, but her grandma noticed her. "Oh, this girl is so bad, you're bullying Xing when he's so young." Mrs. Li grabbed her granddaughter and held her in her arms to protect her little great-grandson. Just when Jiyan was twisting her body and wanting to act coquettishly with her grandma, Shui Ling came in and said, "The Marquis and the fourth master are back." "Ah, my adoptive father and dad are back." Jiyan immediately jumped off the ground and ran to the front yard. Old Mrs. Li was helpless and laughed and scolded, "The older this girl gets, the worse she looks. She looks like a jumping horse and a monkey." After saying that, she went down to put on her shoes, then carefully picked up Xingxing's swaddling clothes, and said to Wenjuan, "Master Marquis and your fourth uncle must have come back to see the stars. I will carry him over for a while and then bring the stars back." Wenjuan was not worried at all and responded, "I know, Grandma. With the stars by my side, I don't dare to turn over when sleeping. If you take him away, I can sleep peacefully for a while." Zhao Yuru felt distressed when she heard that. She fixed her daughter-in-law's hair and said, "I will come over to sleep with you tonight and ask Brother Huan to move out. Besides breastfeeding, you just need to sleep well. Brother Huan is a heavy sleeper. Being by your side can't really help you except to make you feel at ease." Wenjuan nodded with gratitude on her face, "Thank you, Mother. Thank you, we are a family. Besides, we have all been here since you, so we know that this feeling is uncomfortable. Just hold on and it will be fine after the confinement period." Zhao Yuru tucked her daughter-in-law in, and asked Aunt He to help take care of her for a while before going to the front yard. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 750. Chapter 750 Unexpected Premature Birth. House actually has an average child, and he has never taken care of such a young child. After holding Xing for a while, his arms were as stiff as stones, which made Xing uncomfortable, and he frowned and was about to wake up. Li Laozi quickly took it, holding Xingxing's with his big hands and using his arms as a pillow for Xing. His posture was standard and extremely skillful. Sure enough, Xingxing chirped twice and fell asleep again. Li Laozi couldn't help but shouted proudly, "Haha, I hugged Funiu every day when she was a child, so I have long been used to it." Old Mrs. Li couldn't see her son's arrogance, so she laughed and scolded, "I just hold a child to see how proud you are. People who don't know, they think you have done something earth-shattering. Everyone also laughed. Ji-Yin sat next to her adoptive father, smiling and peeling an orange for her adoptive father to eat. Ho-Ye smiled and ruffled her hair, then took out 2 small boxes from his arms. In the box are 2 zodiac safety buttons carved from suet jade, one with a puppy engraved on it, giving good news. The other one is carved with a galloping pony, which is of course for the stars. The good news held the peace button and I was so happy. With her nephew being born in the past few days, and although she loved him very much, seeing that the focus of the family had shifted away from her, she still felt a little disappointed deep down in her heart. But today, a safety button from her adoptive father easily cured her. The family members must be like the adoptive father, and they will not forget about her as a baby just because a star was born. Seeing the fat girl's bright smile, Mr. Ho also smiled and gave her a piece of orange. So, the father and son sat in the bright sunshine of early spring, listening to the laughter and laughter, biting open the oranges in their mouths. The taste was half sour and half sweet, just like the beautiful life in front of them. Help! Old lady, help! Our lady has tripped over the threshold and is about to give birth. While everyone was chatting lively, sister-in-law Kyan from next door suddenly ran over and asked for help, which completely destroyed the peace of the Lee family. Ouch, go find Dr. John quickly. Mrs. Lee jumped up and ran to the next door. It's still more than half a month before the time comes. What should I do if I give birth now? Tao Hongying shouted, pulling Zhao Yuru and followed her. Ji-Yin took Xing Xing from his father's arms and took it to the backyard to Grandma He and his sister-in-law. After giving some instructions, he also went to the next door. At this moment, Dr. Zhang has arrived and is diagnosing Mrs. Wen's pulse. The old man's brows were furrowed, and Mrs. Wen's sore forehead was covered in cold sweat, but she endured not saying a word. After a long while, Dr. Zhang said, I will prescribe the medicine, boil the oxytocin, and prepare to deliver the baby immediately. The child is already frightened and must be born today, otherwise the blood will flow out and the child will be in danger while still in the belly. Ji-Yin immediately said, Grandpa Zhang writes the prescription, and I will prepare the medicine. The Dr. Zhang nodded, wrote down the prescription in a few words, and ran home after hearing the good news. Since my sister-in-law and her aunt became pregnant together, she has planted a lot of related medicinal materials in the space, which can come in handy now. She called Shui Ling to find a medicine jar, lit a fire to boil the medicine, and sent the labor-inducing medicine soup to the next door as quickly as possible. Even, she took out the century-old ginseng stored in the space. She has harvested a lot of ginseng seedlings in different years in the past few years. After being nourished by the space medicine garden, several times the time difference has passed, and some of the plants are now over 100 years old. Just in case, she specially prepared a spare one. The second sister-in-law's delivery went smoothly, but it was no longer needed. Unexpectedly, something unexpected happened to senior sister here. As soon as the ginseng was handed into the hands of divine Dr. Zhang, he immediately praised, where did this ginseng come from? It's really a good thing. I said a few casual words about the good news, and my whole heart flew into the delivery room. Mrs. Wen drank oxytocin and has already started giving birth. I don't know how long it took, but the midwife who delivered Wenjuan's baby last time and Mr. Wen arrived almost at the same time. The midwife washed her hands and entered the house. Soon Mrs. Wen's screams of pain became quieter. But Mr. Wen stood outside the window, his eyes still red with anxiety. Fortunately, the midwife loudly said in the room, although it is a few days early, the baby's fetal position is very correct. Don't worry, everyone, the baby will be born soon. Sure enough, everyone felt relieved when they heard this. But that being said, unexpected premature birth is definitely not that easy. One basin after another of blood and water was brought out, and even 2 bowls of ginseng soup were brought in, but the child still showed no intention of being born. Mr. Wen finally couldn't hold on anymore and collapsed. He knelt down directly under the window. The proud censor asked all the gods and Buddhas in the sky and the ancestors of the Kui family. He also wanted to seek help from the ancestors of the Wen family, but since he had rebelled from the family, the ancestors would not necessarily bless him, but would instead anger him. At this time, he did not dare to take any risks. Everyone's eyes were red when they saw it, and they saluted together. No one knows whether it will be useful to ask like this. But at this time, I can't help even if I want to, so I have to do this. Until night fell, a bright crescent moon hung in the sky, and finally a cry came from the house. Tao Hongying hugged her baby and opened the door to announce the good news. Congratulations to Mr. Wen, Jinro has given birth to a baby girl. Okay, Mr. Wen seemed to be a little joyful and ran forward in two steps. Just as Tao Hongying was about to hand him the swaddling clothes, he stepped over and rushed into the room. Junior sister. How are you? Do you feel any pain? Everyone inside and outside the house looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Tao Hongying patted the thin little girl in her arms and joked, "Girl, your father loves your mother more. Mom, give me a hug." Junior sister, Ji Yin jumped to take over the swaddling clothes, but unfortunately Tao Hongying couldn't trust her, for fear of breaking the Wen family's baby. Sure enough, within a moment, Mr. Wen realized what he was doing and ran out to find his daughter. Although the baby landed safely, he was born prematurely and was a little thin. Mrs. Wen is even more weakened and needs to rest. On the third day of the wedding, Mr. Wen only invited close relatives and friends, such as the Lu family, Mr. Peng, Mr. Zhou, and others. Even when having a banquet at home, Mr. Wen was afraid of disturbing his wife and daughter, so he borrowed the Li family's yard. Everyone thought it was an exaggeration, but they also understood that he had a daughter in his old age and had a friendly relationship with his wife, so they paid more attention to it. At the banquet, everyone toasted and said congratulations. Everyone in the Li family is even more envious. They have been looking forward to girls for 4 generations, but there is still only one named Fu Niuer. Mr. Wen got a girl at one stroke, which made the Li family jealous. Mr. Wen was so happy that he got drunk and started crying again. He has cried for so many years, falling in love with the pain and suffering of his junior sister, the ecstasy of finally becoming a couple, and the despair and fear of his wife's premature birth the day before yesterday. It was really unseemly for a grown man to act like this, but no one laughed at him. Every life has unbearable weight. People who have not experienced it will not understand. Shenzhong Dr. Zhang prescribed a soup tonic, and Mrs. Wen drank it to nourish her body and look forward to more food production. It's a pity that she is old after all. Being able to give birth to the child safely is already a blessing from God. Any other hope is just greed. Mrs. Lu helped find many wet nurses, but the little girl from the Wen family was very picky. No wet nurse satisfied her, and she would not eat at all unless she was extremely hungry. Wen Juan came to visit Mrs. Wen after her confinement. Occasionally, she picked up the little girl and fed her once. As a result, the little girl seemed to have found her own mother. She would not let up until she vomited. In desperation, Mr. Wen bought a dairy goat and planned to ask Wen Juan to feed the little girl several times during the day and feed the goat milk at night. The little girl is extremely smart, she can distinguish smells better than a puppy, and she cries loudly every night. In the end, after Wen Juan discussed it with her family, she took the little girl to the backyard and fed her with Sing Sing. End of this chapter.